Hello, Lee. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Savannah. Good afternoon.
How's it going?
Good. You?
It's so warm, isn't it?
It's warm for a November day.
And yet I'm wearing this jacket.
Yes.
Because it was cold this morning when I left.
It was quite cold this morning. Cold enough for me to build a fire in my fireplace.
You got your fire. Wait, when was the first one of the season?
Several weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I must have missed it.
Yeah.
Thrilling news.
We're off and running with the fires.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. It's very exciting.
Well, okay, I wanted to start the show a little bit differently today just because we're starting to get reviews and stuff.
Oh, how about that?
So I wanted to read some of them aloud.
Okay, great.
And just kind of celebrate the fact, I guess, that anyone's listening to the show.
Yes.
And then we can talk about them, which I think will be really fun. The first one, which I actually loved, it's so sweet. It said, I learned so much, I sometimes feel this podcast was created just for me.
Oh, sweet.
Isn't that pure?
Yeah.
The username is Rumpy Dog.
Rumpy Dog? Rumpy Dog, you're all right. You're great. Thank you, Rumpy Dog.
I just love that the sweetest thing ever came from Rumpy Dog. Why not? Okay, another one said, which is actually really good. This was about the episode where we talked about Spotify and how we're all part of dirty systems. Okay, I love this podcast, but I'm so ashamed I'm listening to it on Spotify. I remember William Stringfellow saying that each of us are complicit in the sins of the world, and then loved your... Who is Jacques Ellul?
Jacques Ellul.
That was not me. It said, love that reference. So we have smart people listening. His book leaves you feeling like we're all doomed to be puppets and slaves in the pursuit of technique. Glad you didn't leave it without some hopeful thoughts.
That's clearly a very smart review. Well, first of all, thanks for the William Stringfellow reference. Excellent. And Jacques Ellul,
speaking to Lee's heart.
He or she nailed Jacques Ellul. He does leave us rather despairing in the technological society. So, yes, glad to throw in a little hope.
I don't even remember you mentioning that name, but you do mention a lot of names, and they just, I don't know, some of them I remember, some of them I don't. So thanks for that. Sweaty Brow. Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another one. This was about the Taylor Swift episode. Okay, they said, Katie Joy. Kristen here. I love Taylor Swift, always have. I think the loudest voices in any community tend to be the smallest faction within that community, but it's offered by the media as a blanket majority or Christians don't like. I think that contributes to the ideological divide because everyone takes those small minority yet loud voices and amplifies them to make people believe they're the majority. It's incredibly frustrating.
That's a great comment, I think.
Agreed.
I think that's true.
Agreed.
Or it seems often to be true. How about that?
Yeah.
Nuance is always your friend, Savannah.
Oh my God. It's like you said a really direct statement and then I heard you softening it. It was like...
I didn't soften it. I nuanced it.
You rounded the edges.
I nuanced it.
Anyways, I really loved those comments. Yeah. I thought that they were great.
They were great, yes.
Yeah, which is super fun. But anyways, what did you get into today? What were the vibes? Tell me the best thing that you did today.
Well, let's see. I've had a great day. I just came here from having lunch with a couple of friends. We ate at Vui's here in Nashville, which is great.
What did you get?
I got pho.
Nice.
Is that how you say it? Pho. It's right. Pho.
Mm-hmm.
I had chicken pho. I have to eat chicken because I can't eat meat or pork.
Bummer.
Yeah, I have alpha-gal.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, we had a great lunch. And then prior to that, I just got off a hour-long call with Sharon McMahon.
Oh my gosh. The hero, the legend.
Sharon McMahon, yes.
What did you guys talk about?
We talked about her coming to Nashville for our big end-of-year show at the Schermerhorn Symphony Hall.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm excited about that show.
That's coming up so soon. It's in 3 weeks.
Yes. So it's going to be a great show with her and Allison
Russell.
Allison Russell, Grammy Award winner Allison Russell, who's lovely. I had a call with her last week. Ruby Amanfu, called with her a couple weeks ago. Dwan Hill in the Nashville Choir Room.
Fun.
And so stage full of musicians, string section, horns. It always makes me very excited when we have strings and horns.
It's very moving.
Yeah. So anyway, it's going to be a great night.
Well, if you haven't gotten your tickets for that, for real, go get it. Because it's seriously in 3 weeks at the Symphony Center. And honestly, it's going to be an amazing show. But the Symphony Center itself is also just worth going for.
It is, yes.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, come on down and join us.
Come on down and
November
join us.
23. You can go to nosmallendeavor.com, find out more about tickets.
It'll all be there.
Yeah.
Great. Let's start the show.
Let's do it.
All right, well, welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
And I'm Lee C. Camp.
And if you like what we're doing, we read those reviews because those people liked what we were doing. And the only reason we can hear about that is if you leave us a review.
Yes.
So rate our show, leave us comments, do the whole thing, and it helps other people find us that way.
Yes, it does.
Because the algorithm rewards those who feed it.
It spreads the love.
It spreads the love.
Yes.
And if you want to follow the show, you can follow us at the Subtext Show. You can follow me at Savannah_Locke and Lee at Lee C. Camp. And if you have any questions or suggestions, just DM us at the Subtext Show.
DM Savannah anytime.
Every time I say DM us, you always clarify DM Savannah personally.
Yes, I do.
As you should.
I don't know if I should, but I would do.
Yes, you do.
And I will.
Lee, I'm so excited to talk about today's episode. It is about a show called Nobody Wants This.
Nobody Wants This.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a trailer.
Yeah, you watched the trailer for season 1 and 2.
I did, yes.
And what was your initial impression?
Well, I mean, what's not to like about Kristen Bell?
And she's the best.
It looks very compelling.
It is very compelling.
Yeah.
The brief overview is basically that this rabbi, played by Adam Brody, his name is Noah, falls in love with Kristen Bell, who is like this agnostic podcaster who's like not religious at all, not really interested. And they fall in love and basically try to make it work. So season 1 was all about them trying to make it work and those like initial bumps in the road amidst the honeymoon phase. And you think it's not going to work, but then it does. And Adam Brody comes back and is like, let's make this happen. And then season 2 is about them really working out the kinks in their relationship.
And do they get married?
No. They're just dating.
They're just dating.
They're just dating.
Okay.
But it gets complicated because basically in season 1, Adam Brody is like up to be like the head rabbi at his congregation. And basically they're like, people were like, you can't do this if your girlfriend is not going to if she's not going to convert. And so there's like a lot of personal cost involved. And then she's feeling this pressure and they're like, maybe it's never going to work. And so you're kind of like back and forth for both seasons, honestly. But then at the end of season 1, Adam Brody comes back and then spoiler alert, I'm going to give you 5 seconds not to listen if you don't want to hear how season 2 ends.
Well, wait.
For the listener.
Maybe I don't want to listen.
No, you do want to listen.
I don't want to listen because I may watch it.
Well, spoiler alert.
Can we still have the conversation if I don't listen to how it ends?
Sure.
Okay. Don't say it so I can hear it.
Okay, then I'm not going to say anything. No, it's fine. You don't have to. Huh? You can unplug your ears. I won't spoil it for you.
Well, yeah, I can't believe you were about to do that.
Well, it's kind of relevant, but I guess I'll try to dance around it for the whole season. Okay, so it's basically just about them trying to figure out whether or not they can make it work, which is really fascinating. But I basically made a list while I was watching the show of different topics that I think it brings up that would be relevant for us to talk about.
Yeah.
So let's start with one of them.
One I bet's not on your list, if I may.
Yes.
It's interesting to me, in academia, we talk about research is me search, where you're always exploring things about yourself, right, when you do your research. Isn't it interesting to think about, this has to be like a research is me search for Kristen Bell.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's a Christian who's married to an atheist or an agnostic. So, yeah, that just strikes me as really interesting.
And it is based on a true story. The writer of the actual show, this is her story.
Oh, okay.
It's not like exactly down to the T, but yeah. Research is me search. Yeah. Maybe Kristen Bell is doing that.
Maybe so. Or at least it has to. Surely that was one of the reasons she was attracted to taking the role.
To the role.
Yeah.
Because she's lived it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really interesting. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, first of all, actually came from Mary Evelyn, who's one of our producers. And she said that she talked about one of the things that drew her to the show was that it was like a generally positive view of religious people, which is rare in a lot of like things. And Adam Brody's just like a very normal religious person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times people are so extreme on these TV
For
shows.
Sure. Yep.
And she said, like, I'm actually going to quote our text message. Why not? I feel like sometimes shows and movies portray religious people as a little crazy. And then she gave an instance of a movie called Easy A, which was really fascinating with Emma Stone. But Nobody Wants This is a really cool portrayal that doesn't gloss over the complications.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah.
So talk me through what you think about that.
Well, yeah. I mean, that seems to be the case all over the place. I mean, it seems to often be the case. And, you know, I mean, there's so much, there's low fruit there. There's so many examples that we could pick from our own lives of crazy people. right? Crazy, so-called crazy religious people.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also crazy atheists and crazy secularists. But that's not quite so much a stereotype as the idiotic Christian or the radical Muslim, or the overly particular Jew.
Yep.
So it's like,
Yep.
so yeah, those are interesting stereotypes.
Are there any like shows, movies, books that you've read that you feel like reflected kind of like people's religious pursuits well?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, quite a few. I mean, the one that kind of like immediately comes to mind, maybe because we're talking about a rabbi, is Chaim Potok. Excuse my pronunciation. The Chosen. He's writing about the experience of Jews in Brooklyn, and these just beautiful, beautiful stories. That one, and also his one. I've read that one, and I've also read My Name Is Asher Leave. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Which is another beautiful, beautiful story. But like you were just saying, they're compelling pictures, and yet they also depict the complexity of it all, right? And that there's really no such thing as a religious person, and I don't even like the word religion because no one really knows what you mean. I mean, there's like huge academic debates about what's even meant by the word religion,
right?
And so I try to avoid the word as much as possible. But what you have in those stories is you have a more modern Orthodox Jew, and then you have a Hasidic Jew, and you see the very extreme differences just between them, two different kinds of Jews, right?
Yep.
And same thing with Christians. There's as many differences between Christians as there are differences between different kinds of Jews, and so forth and so on. And so it doesn't really help us to talk a whole lot about, religious people, but instead, what are we talking about? And different people have different traditions of faith, and that's always interesting to explore the beauty and the complexity and sometimes the ugliness of those various manifestations of that.
And how it impacts the way that they live and the choices they make.
Sure.
Yeah, which is so real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I think growing up, like, in more of like a evangelical culture war bent home, anytime like religious or Christian people were displayed in movies and TV shows in not a very positive way, like if it was not extremely positive, then there was just like ultimate offense, like where it's like, how dare they? Like, how dare they? And I think like I've tried to unlearn so much of that there, even if depictions are negative now, honestly, they just don't even offend me anymore because I'm like, that's real. Like this probably happened to someone before. But I was thinking about, there was this movie, you will probably not have heard of this, but have you ever heard of the movie Saved?
No.
Okay, there's this movie called Saved, starring Mandy Moore. I cannot remember when it came out. I was in high school, though, so like it was in the early 2000s. And it was basically like poking fun at really conservative Christians and how they say that they like are doing everything to love God, but then they treat people like poorly, according to this movie's framework, okay? And so she's like a high school student, like perfect and like very dedicated to like God and evangelizing and whatever. And her classmate finds out that she's pregnant. And her classmate obviously is like not married. So this is like cardinal sin for Mandy Moore's character. And there is this amazing scene that's still viral to this day on social media where Mandy Moore confronts this girl who just found out she was pregnant and basically tries to like drag her to go convert and like be Christian. And the girl was like, I don't want anything to do with this. And Mandy Moore said like, Jesus loves you, like yelling, Jesus loves you. And the girl turns around and says, you know nothing about Christ's love. Or no, you know nothing about love. And Mandy Moore takes her Bible and throws it at her back and said, I am filled with Christ's love. And this clip like literally is everywhere on social media. And I always think about that when I think about things that maybe back in the day, like when I was in high school, I would have been like so terrified of that being a depiction. But now I'm like, that's actually really interesting sociology. And it's like really interesting to think about like what framework informed Mandy Moore's character that would cause her to think that that was at all helpful for this girl who just found out she was pregnant. So there are probably better ways of dealing with like negative and positive depictions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm remembering I went out and interviewed Rainn Wilson one time, Dwight Schrute. Yeah. And one of the things that got picked up from that interview that I did with him was that Rainn was, Rainn's Baha'i, and he was talking about how uncool belief in God is in Hollywood. And that, from his perspective, it's all kind of often looked down on in Hollywood. And, so a lot of people kind of pick that up, and there ended up being quite a number of stories about Rain talking about that. And I think we can see that. And obviously, like in my academic work, I've done a lot of critiques of the Christian tradition. And I think that's one thing that Christian academics often ought to do, is ask how does this go wrong, and how does it not play out well, and what are the missteps that have been made to make sometimes a mockery of it. But then you also have to ask the question of why is there such a trend maybe to have these stereotypes where you're not taking seriously. I mean, like, how many of us really know someone like the Mandy Moore character? On the other hand, I know a whole lot of people of faith who, of both Protestant liberal types, Catholic types, evangelical types, even fundamentalist types. And I also know, a number of, I don't know a whole lot of Muslims, but I have acquaintances with a number of Muslims and a number of Jewish rabbis, and who are all beautiful, wonderful people, right? And so I know a whole lot more examples of people that are beautiful examples of various faith traditions, and I know some that are real assets, So, but when the stereotype is always depicting you like you're an idiot, it gets a little tiresome.
Yeah, Rainn Wilson has, like, with his book, his Soul Boom book or whatever it's called. Soul Boom or Bloom?
Soul Boom.
Boom. He did talk about that in several of his interviews, of like that bent against anyone being like dedicated to any sort of faith.
Yeah.
Which I do think it is reflected in a lot of ways. And then there's also the other part of it where there's like then this Christian cinema and like Christian like television shows and stuff. And it's so flat. It falls oftentimes so flat to me.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, this isn't a real person at all.
Yeah.
It's like if you wrote the main character to have like no real like human parts about them, because they're just like little faith superheroes. Yeah. And I do think that because of that, I tend to be more drawn to like any like more real depiction regardless, even if it's negative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm like, come on, you guys.
Right.
Like, I feel like I'm kind of being like proselytized through this story.
Yeah. Right. Hagiography.
What is that?
Oh, you don't know that word?
I don't know.
Oh, good. New vocabulary word for the day, hagiography.
Okay.
So hagios is the Greek word referring to the saints. So when you talk about writings about the saints, it's oftentimes this over-idealized, sentimental sweetness, right? So hagiography is you're not showing the complexities of a character. You're not showing how they're torn, but you're just showing how they're saintly. Hagiography.
Is Hagia Sophia, does that saint there then?
Holy, yeah.
Oh, so it's holy.
Holy wisdom,
okay.
Yeah.
Sick. And what language did you say that was?
Hagios would be Greek.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. That was great.
Yeah.
Great knowledge that I was not expecting to get today. So yeah, hagiography. So that's, number one. That's number one on my list. I feel like we nailed it. Number two, sacrifices in relationships. Okay, so the whole first season is Joanne, who is Kristen Bell's character, trying to decide if she can sacrifice her beliefs of not believing to become Jewish so that Noah can become rabbi at his temple. Or if Noah can sacrifice his job to be with Joanne, even though he knows he'll like lose his job and to be with her. So it's like this, I think, a really great look at like how relationships require sacrifices. And it's kind of like this suspension over season 1 and actually season 2, which I won't spoil for you.
Good, thank you.
But that tension is there. So I kind of wanted to talk about this like breaking point that they have in season 2, where Joanne says, don't you think we both deserve to be in relationships where we can be exactly who we are while still moving forward? And I thought, okay, what does that say about relationships? Does a relationship mean that we can always be exactly who we are? And then are there ever times that we need to change in order to be with each other?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts about all that.
Yes, love it.
What does that mean, be who we are? I mean,
for her, I think in that context, it meant her not having to act like she believed in something she didn't believe, but then him also being able to have a job that he loves while being with someone who doesn't believe it.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that who we are is never fixed and static. We're always developing and changing, right?
So, such a good point.
I'm not the same person I was even 6 months ago, much less 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so we're always in development. And so then the question becomes, is our development and our change something that seems to be in continuity with what's gone before, and or have we had some sort of legitimate things come into our life that have redirected who we think of ourselves being and what we're pursuing, that still is going to have some sort of continuity, I think, with what's gone on in the past. So it's like we're always changing. And then this question becomes, well, what kind of justifications do you give for the kind of changes that you make? I also don't know what it means to say sacrifice your beliefs, as if you can simply choose simply to intellectually give assent to some idea that you don't believe is true. I don't know what that means or looks like.
So, in the context, first of all, I'm so grateful that you said that. Jared from the Bible for Normal People talks about that a lot, how identity isn't static.
Yeah.
It's always evolving. And it's so important for us to remember that because, if we can trap ourselves otherwise, if we don't think that. So great point. Number 2 is when it comes to sacrificing beliefs. So I think in the context of the show, what I take it to mean is, should Kristen Bell act like she believes in something to appease Adam Brody and the temple? Or should Adam Brody act like he doesn't care whether or not his girlfriend/future wife potentially becomes Jewish, even though he does? Like, do you sacrifice one or the other in order to be with each other?
I mean, it seems to me there's one presumption here that I don't know that I want to presume, and that is I don't know what it means to be a Jew.
Same.
So it's like, I don't think we can think of, so let's say, being Jewish, as some would say, religiously Jewish, not just ethnically Jewish, what it means to be Jewish versus what it means to be Christian. I doubt that it's possible for a Christian to become a Jew or vice versa by simply dropping some intellectual propositions and putting others in their place.
Yes. Yep.
It may be a whole lot more about lifestyle and culture and the kinds of things you do.
Yeah.
Which raises the question, I love Clarence Jordan. Do you know Clarence Jordan? Oh, he's somebody else that you nice. Want to know about. Yeah, Clarence Jordan was this wonderful human being in the 20th century who went off to seminary. I think he went to Southern Baptist in Louisville, and he was kind of a radical. So he said he wanted to go up there and study the New Testament because he didn't want Southern preachers tying him in knots. So he wanted to really know what the New Testament said. So he did like a PhD in Greek.
Interesting.
And so he goes back to Georgia and he sets up this community that is interracial, like in the 1930s in Georgia, that practices common purse. So they all share all of their wealth and belongings. And 3, they're committed to nonviolence because he's taken the Sermon on the Mount seriously. But anyway, Clarence Jordan, I think it was Clarence Jordan that used to talk about the word belief. And he used to say in Middle English, I think this is the way he put it, that in Middle English, the word belief didn't mean what kind of intellectual ideas do you have in your head, but belief meant what does one live by? It's by life, right? And so when you talk about belief, if you mean by belief assent to intellectual ideas that you believe to be true, it seems to me hard just to kind of swap those out and say, well, everything's fine. But on the other hand, you're saying, well, what kind of things are you living by? That's a different set of questions. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that I've never heard of that by life thing or belief thing, but something that they always used to say in seminary was like, belief is saying that this chair will hold me if I sat in it, and trust is sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
And it's about like sitting in the chair, because a lot of people have beliefs about what will or will not work, but it's about doing the thing.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept. But
I think Clarence Jordan is saying maybe a better way to understand belief is actually in terms of trust.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Trust and belief are kind of flip sides of the same thing.
Agreed.
Not different things.
Yeah. I love that. Which that kind of goes to another topic I wanted to talk about was the idea of like conversion, because they do talk about that in this. Because what you're pointing at is what I think Kristen Bell's character wrestled a lot with in season 1 and in season 2, which is basically like, I don't feel that this thing is true. Like, how am I supposed to like, am I just supposed to like make the choice like in my brain and then it happen? And actually, like the most impactful conversation she had was with Noah, who is the rabbi's sister-in-law. And her name is Esther. And Esther was basically like, you're already there. Like, you're already coming to Shabbat. You're already doing all of the events. You're coming to temple. Like, this is what it is. And for her, that became like a shifting moment where instead of her waiting for this, like, epiphany of, oh, this is real or this is true, Esther opened up the door to a different way of thinking about it, which is like, I'm already doing this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she leaned into belief is what one lives by.
Yeah, without even knowing about Clarence.
Yeah, how about that?
How-
Yeah.
But it did get me.
But I mean, in something you sent me earlier in thinking about this, you asked the question, at what point does compromise become self-betrayal?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, okay, because the conversion piece, which obviously this is always evolving, so I feel like even compromise and self-betrayal in the context of this story would change based on where you land in it. So I'll just like zoom out and not say like for Kristen Bell's character or for Adam Brody's character. But this is something I've been thinking about a lot is like in relationships, like obviously it feels so different with my husband because like I've chosen to be with him and until we die, it's going to be like, so it feels different in that. But maybe with like friendships and whatnot, I do wonder like when does compromise become betraying myself? And what do we do with that tension when it happens? And so it's like if, for example, like I will talk about like in my marriage, this isn't real, but like if Todd was doing something that was like perpetually hurting my feelings or whatever, like, but he just said like, that's just who I am. Like when does saying, okay, that's who you are become betraying myself if it's harming me?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's like a line there or if it's just something that requires discernment or wisdom at every stop.
Yeah.
IDK.
It does seem to, in my mind, require wisdom at every stop for sure, and that it's complicated. But it, I don't think it's always obvious what the answer to that question is. I mean, it's like, you could, I could see how, for example, something as trivial as, two friends or two spouses talking about where they were going to go to eat for dinner.
Yeah.
And compromise on that is, that's part of what any relationship requires all the time, right?
It is certainly not self-betrayal to go to Bricktops.
Yeah. Right. However, it could be.
It could be. It's so true.
It could be because you could have discovered that you are always stuffing down what you want.
Yeah.
And you are never having the courage to speak up and talk about what you want.
Yeah.
And that you're never voicing your preferences. And you come to that realization and you tell yourself, I'm going to start becoming a more mature human being by saying what I think and speaking up for it, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then there comes the restaurant conversation and you stuff it down. Mm-hmm. You've just betrayed yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so it just depends upon the context and circumstances.
I think so
but
too.
There's even more, it's even more complicated because I started thinking about the book Shusaku Endo's book, Silence. Have you read that book?
But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so it's these missionaries in, I think it's 17th century Japan, where Christianity was just intensely persecuted. Mm-hmm. And they go to find one of their mentors who has apparently become an apostate and denied the faith. Mm-hmm. And then they get over there and they are taken into these situations where other Christians are literally being tortured. Mm. And they're told, you can either deny the faith by stepping on this image of Christ, mm-hmm. or not. Mm-hmm. And if you do not deny the faith, then we will continue to torture your friends. Mm. And so in the end, spoiler alert, spoiler alert is that they denied the faith. Mm. However, as the book unfolds, you realize, well, did they deny the faith or did they just do this because of their faith, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So for whatever reason, I thought, I wonder if Stanley Hauerwas has ever read Shusaku Endo. So I emailed him this morning. I said, have you ever read this? And he emailed me back pretty quick. And he said, I've read it multiple times. And he said, I think it's a brilliant novel. And he said, let me just read it.
I love that we're getting some fresh Stanley content for the pod.
He said, I've read it several times. I think it's a great novel that makes clear a challenge that is intrinsic to Christianity. There is no getting it right. And then he said, I'm 85 and being old sucks, Stan.
I'm 85 and being old sucks. I love him so much.
But that idea that, a challenge that's intrinsic to Christianity, there is no getting it right, is that, but instead it's always the wisdom thing. You're always trying to figure out in this given context, what does it mean to try to bear witness to these things we claim, and then doing the best you can in that context. And you're going to screw up.
And you're going to mess up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, I think with when I wrote that question in our episode brief about the compromise and the self-betrayal, as I wrote it, I was like, there's not an answer to this. When does compromise become self-betrayal? It's there isn't one because it's so situationally dependent and only you can know the work you're doing and kind of the progress of different relationships and whatever.
But it's a question we all ought to ask ourselves.
We need to be asking
all the time.
Yeah. Because I even think I have a bunch of friends who are dating and figuring out whatever, the apps and all of that garbage. And it's going through and looking at pictures of guy after guy after guy. Is it self-betrayal to make a compromise on their aesthetics? No, that's not self-betrayal. There has to be compromise saying oh, I thought I wanted a guy with this kind of hair, but instead he has this kind of hair and I'll give him a shot. That's not self-betrayal. Yeah. But there are obviously there can be minor things to the eye that are actually major things if they've just been left undealt with. That can't be self-betrayal. Yeah, very good conversation, though, and I think really prominent in this. And when you watch, I'm being so diligent about not spoiling this. When you watch it, I'm so curious to know what you say. Okay, so another drama in the show. Joanne has a sister named Morgan that she does a podcast with.
Okay.
And in season 2, Morgan brings home a guy and basically announces to everyone that they're in love and going to probably get married. And it comes out of nowhere, out of left field, even though Joanne and Morgan talk about everything. And so she was like, what the heck? You didn't even tell me about this guy. And now you're coming home and you're all on top of each other. What's going on? And then the story unfolds that Morgan is dating her therapist. And the guy has been her therapist for years. And they are dating, even though that's illegal. It's literally against the code of conduct and ethics and everything. And it becomes a very prominent storyline in season 2. Is basically when Joanne is Morgan, what are you doing? And literally calls her out and is this is crazy. Morgan turns around and says, you're toxic and you're not supporting me, and storms out and leaves. And so it kind of creates this rift in their relationship. And a lot of season 2 with their relationship is them figuring out how to be friends with each other, even though in Joanne's opinion, Morgan is making a unhealthy choice. And then in Morgan's opinion, Joanne's not supporting her. So this got me thinking, how do you support and be friends with people who are maybe making choices that are harmful for them?
Yeah, and what do you think about that?
This has been so tough for me. I tend to be very laid back in this area. With my friendships, unless seriously the house is on fire, I'm in it with you and I'm do whatever you want. I'm very chill. But there have been points in the past 10 years in my friendships where I'm oh, I have to say something. And I don't know, when thinking about this episode, I was trying to think of what it was that rose up in me that made me realize I needed to say something. Maybe it was God, I don't know. But when I think about practicalities when it comes to that is I always ask people for advice before I talk to my friend about it. So I always ask my therapist, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is how I want to say it. What am I missing? How can I phrase it better? And I asked at least 2 other people in my life before addressing it. In most instances, it went well. But yeah, I don't know. I think culturally, at least I don't know if it feels this way with your generation, but with my generation, we're very intolerant to feedback. And so it's if it's toxic energy or negative energy, it's cut them off. Literally cut them off if they're telling you that you're not right. And I'm not about that life. I want people to be giving me feedback. And I want, I have a friend that I've known since I was 13, and we were on the phone even a couple of weeks ago. And she was whoa, slow that down. She was where's that attitude coming from about a specific situation? And I was thank God she feels the freedom to be able to look at me and be hey, that's not the vibe. What's going on? And I think that a lot of people take that as what Morgan did, which is you're not supporting me, so I'm out. And that's not friendship either.
Yeah.
So what has been your wisdom process in that?
Yeah, well, I think you calling it the wisdom process in that's exactly right. Because when I think about that, I think about the virtue of prudence, which is famously complex, And
do you know that that's my dog's name, by the way?
Prudence?
Every time you say Prudence, I'm like thinking of Prudence in my head.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the virtue of prudence.
You know what my dog's name is?
No.
Otis.
Cute. After what? After what?
I don't think after anything.
Oh, nice. You just liked the name.
Yeah. Ben, our youngest son, who's
Cute.
was given the dog, named him Otis.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So.
But yes, the virtue of prudence.
Yeah. So it's just famously complex. There's like Aquinas has like 8 different components of prudence, and it's a very difficult thing to kind of process, and you have to ask yourself a whole lot of questions. And so, again, I would just say it depends on the circumstances. It depends upon a lot of different kind of judgments. And it seems to me that you're asking for input from other people that's part of docility. Docility is one of the facets of prudence, which is being teachable and getting input from other people. And so
for you, are you basically turning it around to say, instead of you figuring out how to be friends with people who maybe are making choices that are harmful or that you disagree with or even unethical, are you now saying, well, just worry about yourself being teachable and ask for input?
I'm saying that as I think about how to respond, that I'll have to ask myself a lot of questions. And one of those questions would be, maybe I need to get some input from other people who can give me a different kind of take on this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever had like a hard conversation with a friend or someone that has been making choices that are difficult?
Yes.
In general, like, have you learned anything from that you could share with the class?
Well, I mean, I have certain friends who we know enough about each other that we really know each other's stuff well. And we generally will listen to each other, and we ask permission to give feedback before we do it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And so, sometimes we'll like literally ask, are you wanting any feedback on that? Mm-hmm. Or may I give you feedback on that? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's a way of just saying, okay, here comes some feedback, but I want to make sure that that's what you're wanting right now. Mm. And that seems to be helpful practice. And actually, I've gotten to where my wife and I do that with each other a lot of times, where, we can complain about something or gripe about something, and we can ask each other, are you wanting any feedback on that? Mm-hmm. And sometimes the answer is no. And so even if we think the other person is dealing with it, poorly or in a way that's wrong, if the other person says, no, I'm not wanting any input, we just leave it alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think generally for me, that has helped a lot, is that I just kind of lean into enough trust to say we're going to trust each other enough to ask each other if we want input. I've generally, like even with undergrad students through the years after I learned that practice, I would not even give students feedback unless I asked for permission or they asked me, unless I thought they might be doing something that would be so damaging that if I were their parent, I would want one of their professors to say something. And so in that case, I would still ask them for permission, though, and say, can I give you some feedback on that? And get a yes first. Mm-hmm. Because, obviously, when I say yes to someone, yes, I would like feedback, it's going to allow me to be more open to whatever it is that they might have to say. So that's been one of the key practices for me.
Yeah, it softens the experience rather than feeling like an attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard. It's so hard to know in those scenarios, like when, like even with like the student thing, it's like there are different like degrees where you're like, oh, this one's like code red. Like we need to like probably work through this. And I think with the show, what it deals with, interestingly, is like, when does support become enabling? Like, you just don't say anything. Like, when does it just really enable really bad behavior or like harmful behavior or like a harmful relationship?
Right.
And that is always difficult and tricky when I think about it as well in practical life.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Noah, the rabbi, his brother Sasha, is married to a gal named Esther.
Okay.
So Sasha, who is Noah's brother, is friends with Kristen Bell's sister, Morgan. Okay. So
who's dating her therapist.
Yeah. When you say it out loud, it does warm up to this complication.
Maybe that should have been a sign.
So true. Yeah. So a lot of season 1 was basically Sasha and Morgan developing this friendship. And I found myself being like, do not have an affair. Do not have an affair. Like, I'm like feeling the tension of this because they're kind of like, they have great chemistry. They never cross any lines. They're just friends. But in my head, I'm like, this is going to end there. And it never does, like in season 1. And then in season 2, Esther, who is Sasha's wife, is basically like, I'm over it. Like, I don't want you guys having this kind of friendship. We need to work on our marriage because his marriage was pretty unstable at the time. And so season 2, the arc is more of Sasha and Esther working on their marriage while trying to figure out how Sasha and Morgan can still have like a healthy friendship while Morgan is dating her therapist. Okay. Because she's wanting a lot of advice and she tends to go to Sasha in those moments. So it just made me think like, how do we feel about friendships with people of the opposite sex that are outside of marriage?
Well, how do you feel?
No, I answered the last question first, and I'm tired of talking. So now you get to go.
Well, it's very interesting that you asked that question right now because I kid you not, like 24 hours ago, my mother, who's 85, just turned 85 this week. She and my dad and I were waiting on something together. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember how this came up, but she said, I've all my life said that men and women cannot be friends with people of the opposite sex. And she was obviously including that within marriage.
Yeah.
And she said, and I've said that all my life. And she said, but that's not right. And she started talking about one of her friends, who was one of my dad's roommates, and they had a very lovely, wonderful relationship, all their lives. And I think it finally just occurred to her, I've said that all my life, but I had this friendship, and and she was lamenting that he had passed and wished that he was still living. And so it's obviously
Lee, that's so sweet.
Yeah, it is sweet. But it's obviously a potentially complicated matter. There's no question about it. But and it can obviously go wrong really badly. Mm-hmm. But I do have friendships with women who are not, to whom I'm not married. Mm-hmm. And I think the deal is, can you practice really good boundaries and honor them and continue to honor your spouse? And I do think that that's possible.
Oh, I think so too, yeah. Oh my gosh, go your mom for changing her mind.
Yeah.
Like an icon. But yeah, that, and I think the show does kind of talk about the boundaries piece and how Esther was really not involved in the conversations as the wife of what those boundaries ought to be until like they basically had a breakdown. And I think too, like if you have friendships of the opposite sex, if you're married, if you're not, with people who are married, whatever, it's like every party kind of needs to be involved in that process. I think it would be helpful. I was thinking too, though, like for my work, like doing songwriting stuff, I'm with men all the time. And like, I work with the same producers a lot and work with a lot of the songwriters a lot. And we are friends. And a lot of them are married and I'm obviously married. And I think because of the nature of my work, if I couldn't be friends with them, our lives would be very difficult. Like It would just be really hard if we weren't like talking about real life stuff or whatever. And so I think that there's also like a work context there that hits me. I think that I wonder how like the religious context piece plays into it, like with the Billy Graham rule.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, the Billy Graham rule is that he wouldn't be with a woman by themselves ever, or just with the door closed.
I mean, my understanding is that he wouldn't be alone with another woman who was not his wife.
Who was not his wife.
Without another person present, another man present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people kind of play by that to play it safe. I have no judgment. I honestly don't really have judgment towards that. But I think it's just like, I always am curious about like who would be disadvantaged by that setup.
Yeah. I mean, one of my friends, a woman, we've discussed that a time or two, that rule, and she has said, look, that rule disadvantages the woman.
I think so too.
Yeah. And it simply puts in place a kind of system or structure that obviously is going to make it give privileges to men that women don't have.
Because of friendships.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things happen due to relationships and to the nature of friendships. And especially in like more Christian settings, it's like if male pastors, like who are more in positions of power or authority or making like big decisions, if women are not like in those like aren't friends in those scenarios, like then they're never even going to be included in those decision-making processes. And it's like, I do think about the power structure in more like Christian or religious settings. And then I also think about it even like with, once again, with songwriting stuff. It's like, if men are only writing with other men and if they won't include a woman because they don't want to be in a room alone with a woman, then the women aren't getting they're not getting cuts on records. And so it's like, even who is that disadvantaging in the name of like trying to be like pure or protected?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I do think that there are all sorts of kind of, given whatever the context is, there are all sorts of kind of practices you can put in place that are good for everybody. You know, maybe it's helpful to keep a door open, you know?
Totally. Oh, God, yeah.
Just for the sake of transparency or whatever, which is one of my practices. But yeah, it's complicated, but I do think it's definitely possible.
And wisdom is like necessary.
Yeah.
With one of my best friends who does music, he's a producer. His rule is like when we go to Ohio a lot to write for this church, we would never do that, just him and I. Like there's always more people in the car with us. And so it's like just like certain rules that like work for us, that it just makes sure, I don't know, like not that anything would ever happen, but just to make sure that like we're never even in that position.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's very helpful. And you know, like another one of my rules is that I do not ever say anything negative about my wife to another woman friend.
Oh my God, that's such a good one.
So, yeah, I think it's an important one. Yeah.
If Todd ever did anything wrong, my husband, I'm always the one kind of, you know, flailing around. But yeah, that's such a good one. Yeah.
I do think that your comment about, you know, what's the impact of cultural expectations, I do suspect that people maybe, like even listening to this conversation, if they're not from the South, and if they're not in the Bible Belt, they may be scratching their head thinking, what the heck are you people talking about?
Oh my God, literally saying it's so conservative. As I said, the car thing, I'm like, it works for us. And I understand why people would be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's one of the ironies is like, in some of the Christian stuff, there's this expectation that there's always going to be so much sexual tension between a man and a woman that there has to be these huge guards in place, like you're never going to be together, or you're not going to have a friendship with a person of the opposite sex.
Yes.
Whereas I think a lot of people would say, why do you have to presume that, right?
Yes.
And why not presume that even if there is some of that stuff, that people are going to be mature enough to behave themselves and make good choices, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Literally, I was just thinking that, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go into it, but you're 1,000% right. That, like, the Christian context, I was thinking the language I was going to use around it is, like, that a lot of the times we've been taught to fear each other.
I think that's very true.
Like, that men should fear, like, women being Jezebels or whatever, and that women should fear men, like, not being able to control any impulses, and that there's, like, a lack of maturity at all in that stereotype, and that is, though, what has shaped a lot of Christian culture, and I do think that that's where a lot of even, like, these rules come out of. Yeah, I mean, it's like even the way we might joke with another friend about a friend that they might have of a person of the opposite sex. You know, if you always tend to frame that in terms of a crush or something like that, you're just doing damage to the way we think about relationships, and that's not necessary. Yeah, you're exactly right. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, for never having watched the show, you did a great job dissecting it.
Well, I'm so glad that I can speak coherently about something I know nothing about.
Isn't that the best?
Yeah, it's the best.
Congratulations. Yeah. I hope you watched season 1 at least. At least.